Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Wade and Carter Show. We are live from the Atzenhopper Studios. Daniel Wade White, Ricky King, Scott Tomko on the podium this morning. Thanks to everybody who joins us each and every morning. If you're first time in, welcome to the show. Hang on for a wild ride, the fastest hour in radio as far as I'm concerned. Bobby Leister, Rena Scherer, Mark Kurtz, Torrin Bales, Scott Snow. Good morning, Marina. Mark Zapata, all joining us on this Caldo Wednesday. Wade and Carter weather brought to you by the great folks at AT Deerlam Hayfeed and Ranch Services.
78 degrees and sunny in Victoria, Texas today, heading to a high of only 98. Should be partly cloudy parts of the days. Wind gusts are up to 6 miles an hour. That means it'll be 35 miles an hour out of the south at Colony Creek Country Club. For those of you that are joining us, Bobby Leister is number 4 because he's already in line for Caldo Wednesday. Get over to Veracruz today for the finest caldo de res on the planet. The food is wonderful. The service is great. The family atmosphere is all around you.
And before you go there, stop by Deerlam Feed. They've got everything you need for your home, your gardens, pests, pets,
your deer,
a little bit of everything. Yeah, deer feed time, time to fatten up those deer for deer season.
Absolutely, deer, which of course can be both pets and pests.
Well, you can't legally own a deer.
Right, the state of Texas owns the deer. Had a conversation tonight. Is an important night. I don't know where. It's the 19th. There'll be a talk tonight, I think led by Michael Cloud, Congressman Michael Cloud. I'm not positive. It's just the details are spotty at this point. Don't bore me. Don't break down my story over the facts. There's going to be a screw worm discussion tonight. I do know where to look, and I'm going
Victoria College Emerging Tech Center
at the ETC. Do you know what time, great sir?
That I don't know. I'm going to guess if you get there by 5:30, you'll be there in plenty of time.
Yeah, let me look right here because I've got it. I know I have it. Please carry on.
Yeah. Torrin Bale says he's ready for that first cool front. It's middle of August. You're probably looking, typically I seem to recall them always coming through around Columbus Day. So we got a couple months left.
Okay, so actually it's not Michael Cloud. It's somebody who has a real study in screwworms, Dudley Hoskins with the USDA. He's the Undersecretary of Marketing and Regulatory Programs. I'm surprised the city of Victoria doesn't have an Undersecretary of Marketing and Regulatory Programs. From 6 to 8 tonight at the ETC.
But Congressman Cloud's hosting this thing, right?
I cannot confirm nor deny. I bet he is, though. The congressman certainly, stamped off on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was him for a minute yesterday. He's very, very busy in the district. Congressman Cloud is one of those people that does not come back to the region to sit around and do nothing. He is out and among his constituents. Wanted to point out for those of you that have an interest, for example, this Friday night, Club Westerner, Victoria, so West happens to be the recipient. The West Warrior football program is hosting a fundraiser, and it's a bingo night. $35 gets you in the door. 2 bingo packets.
Wade and Carter bingo
10
night?
games of bingo, yada, yada, yada. $35. And it gets you a meal. Now, we're going to have count it as Wade and Carter bingo night, where we won't get blamed for anything. And I like that. We'll get to Palace and what a great organization that is later. But Atzenhopper is sponsoring the meal. You and I have talked about this before, where they'll do like 1,000 plates, and then they turn around and people sell them for $10 a plate, and they make $10,000 net because Atzenhopper fronts the pork steaks, the green beans, whatever the other vegetable is.
And everybody that cooks it donates their time.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have Michael McLeod in here, the IT and marketing guru, the Facebook presence, if you will, of Atzenhopper, to detail how Atzenhofer is now working in a cooperative effort with General Motors in a pay it forward program that's grant funded, that allows Atzenhofer to do this even more often than they already have. This has been a charitable arm of the Atzenhofer dealerships for years, benefiting countless people, because it's, first of all, the rotisserie that the gentleman uses to cook the pork steaks. I mean, he can put on 300 at a time. And these are those big, sometimes bone-in pork steaks. They're just fantastic. And he smokes them real, low and slow. Just a wonderful event. But Atzenhofer is providing the meal for the Warrior football bingo night. So Friday night.
And it's a lot of fun. I went last year. I had a great time.
$35. If you were here, you'd be going this year. We will be there. I'll be there. And with Donnie. And it's gonna be a big time. But $35 gets you in the door, and the meal.
And a meal. You can't eat for $35 anymore.
No, and it's a good time. Lots of fun game. And they give away a bunch of money and stuff, a bunch of prizes at their bingo night. So we got. So did you see the other day, Ash, where there's been I don't recall the state. It may come to me in a minute. Certainly was not the great state of Texas. There is a movement afoot to include quote unquote black language in the schools of this district. You may be able to Google that. If Cody were here as producer, he could help with that. But that, I'm things like I'm fixing to, essentially
ask you a question.
Yeah, things that you and I say sometimes in jest, ebonics, if you will, that there's not an expectation that these kids go to school and learn proper English. The comment is now that because they've been raised with this quote unquote language, that the schools should teach the kids in that language as well. So, I mean, in essence, inner city black kids should be taught English as a second language. And I just think it's criminal for the kids. It's parent abuse. It's child abuse. So you got Daniel Wade White, Ricky King, and Bobby Leist and Scott Tomko. Sorry, Scott. And side note, Rangers win. Rangers win last night. We'll get to the First State Bank of Louise update in a minute. Bobby Leister, Rena Shear. Good morning, friend.
So aren't we just going back to where we were like in the 90s when this stuff was kind of going on college campuses? I remember this stuff was being taught in the late 90s, early 2000s Ebonics on college campuses. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's almost like, hip hop slang is now part of the vernacular. It's not educated conversation. Now, I think the Brits could go a step further and say that about us, right? We don't speak the King's English, but at the same time, we don't say axe for ask. And we certainly don't, in our hooked on phonics world, we don't put AKS on a paper and expect it to be accepted. So very interesting. Scott Tomko is all excited. We might as well get to the First State Bank of Louise Astros update. Astros last night lose. I don't know the exact score. I don't get bogged down. Oh, Cody Bauman says it's California is where they're – imagine that. California is where they're trying to do the ebonics. Sheriff A.J. Louderback, our state rep for House District 30, checks in, says good morning.
The Astros lose at home to the L.A. Angels of Anaheim 3-1. The second worst team, maybe the worst team in the division, and one of the worst teams in all of baseball. And I mean, I know they're kind of playing good baseball right now because the Rangers took it on the chin from them over the weekend, but still, you can't be losing games to teams that are 26 games below 500 if you want to make the playoffs when you're in the middle of a playoff race.
Absolutely. The funny bone moment for me is, and I told you this last night or this morning, the Brewers, who are 78-48, they're playing really good baseball. The Brewers, they've got to be leading that division. Anyway, the Brew Crew,
they are,
plays the Seattle Mariners in Milwaukee. And the Brewers are already up 13-0 in the 7th. And in the bottom of the 8th, they just add a 9 spot. Ash, 22 runs on 22 hits. The Mariners threw in another 4 errors, or half of the career errors of Varsho. And they lose 22-0. The Mariners do. So the Rangers are only 1 game back, but they're not really a threat. I defer to Tammy Keeling often on matters involving education. She says that movement regarding Ebonics has been around since the 1980s, not new. And I'm not sure the California thing was about Ebonics. I use the word Ebonics. She said it's another boogeyman to push for a national language. I do think that English should be the official language of the United States. Like, for example, why wouldn't it be? That's my first question. Who is it discriminating against? Don't move to France and not learn French. I mean, they don't want you there if you can't speak the language. What is the language of Spain? It's Spanish. I mean, either you learn it or you struggle. I don't see that as discriminatory to any group or organization. And I'll throw in that
only in America is it considered discriminatory, because every other country on the planet has at least one official language. Some have 4, like Switzerland.
Right. And
Canada has 2, because you've got
French,
15% of the population that speak a bastardized version of French. And so they kowtowed to the minority and allowed them to keep their heritage, and French is an official language.
Right. And that's up to them. But the idea that we now have over-the-road truckers who don't speak English, how are you supposed to be held accountable for reading the signs and obeying the traffic laws? The just everyday things, like when you're driving down 59 and it says right lane closed ahead, expect delays. If you don't speak English and can't read the language, that's a problem.
I'm going to give you an example of my recent travels. I stopped at a well-known, I think it was either Love's or Pilot truck stop. Grabbed coffee, went pee, all the things you normally do when traveling, right? Grabbing some chicharrones. And there's a really good one that's kind of sweet and spicy. They're so good. Can't remember the brand, but they're awesome. Anyway, there's about 5 people in line to check out, because the truck driver, who was identifiable by his vest and his Bluetooth headgear, spoke no English and couldn't work the ATM machine, but he's driving an 18-wheeler on our highways.
It's a little scary.
He couldn't work the pin pad to check out, and he spoke no English. It was a bunch of sign language trying to figure out how he could get the hell out of the store, but he's on our highways driving 18-wheelers.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's probably illegal.
Well, there you go. Pat Visconti says, at least now they've implemented the English reading portion of a DOT inspection. If they can't read it, they get yanked out on the spot. And I don't
you can't get a student visa to come to college here if you can't prove that you speak English.
So there's all kinds of peripheral laws around that. Why is it, who does it offend to make English the official language of? So Tammy Keeling comes back in and says, she's on topic. How many national languages shall we have? English, not the King's English, Spanish, what else? I think you don't need any official language except English. I mean, and I'm not trying to oppress any group. It costs millions, more than millions of dollars every year to print. For example, if you apply for any type of credit and later on in the mail, you get a required disclaimer or a required revelation notification that you have had your credit pulled. They send you 2 identical 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. One's in English and one's in Spanish. Why? It costs literally, by anybody's definition, twice as much to send that notification. There's no getting around it. They should not have to do that.
Well, when all the official business in Congress is in English and everything that goes into the congressional record is English, English should be our national language and our official language.
And it's not discriminatory. Learn the language. Assimilate. You live in the United States.
Linda Chris says tin can labels are multilingual. Why? Well, that's purely marketing because they know there's a large push. Absolutely it is.
And you've got a label there if you have room to put English and Spanish on there. But what is stopping, since by definition, at least this week, the Spanish-speaking minority just happens to be a large minority. Why are the Asians not up in arms? Why are the cans not printed also in Arabic? I mean, it does cost more, Linda. You're correct. And that savings or that expense is passed on equally to the majority.
It costs
so
more.
White people pay. English-speaking people pay. English-speaking people pay to provide it in another language.
Like when you go to Canada, you visit the national parks. Everything is in French and English and French. The signs are basically twice as big or there's 2 of them. One on one post, one on another, because you have everything in English and French.
Yeah.
It does double the cost in certain cases. Anything that the government of Canada prints and produces is double. They have an English website and a French website. And the funny thing is, try to do any official business in Quebec in English, where official business is supposed to be done in both languages, or at least and they don't do anything in English in Quebec. No. Against the laws of the country, but they don't care.
Yeah.
And that to me is the more dangerous part. Is it leads to the problem that we already have in this country of lack of assimilation.
Yeah, Ricky King adds that in a lot of other countries, English is pushed in the schools as a second language. That's one thing about Europeans I've always somewhat envied, is that people, not so much the Germans, but people that live in, like, let's say Switzerland, they learn languages from all the surrounding countries. And I don't know.
Well, they have 4 official languages. I think English, French, German, and a dialect of another dialect of German.
Do they learn
it? Rarely spoken there.
Do they learn it in school? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. But a buddy from college was from Norway. They didn't even teach Norwegian in school. They just assumed you were going to learn it.
Right.
And then I believe they taught English. And for him to graduate from high school, he had to learn 2 other languages. This is a guy that spoke very good English with a Norwegian accent, but very good English. Norwegian.
Germanic. It's somewhat Germanic.
No, it's Scandinavian. I think there's some similarities.
They don't have the
no, but he could. He spoke German and he spoke Russian. So he knew 4 languages, could also speak and converse in Swedish and Finnish because they're similar to Norwegian, but 4 languages before he left high school. the guy works for an international fishing processing equipment manufacturer. Straight out of college, had a job making great money because he spoke Russian and English. And at the time, the wall had come down and this company was based in the US, and they were selling a lot of fishing equipment to.
Yeah. We know that's a CIA front. Who are we kidding? That guy's a plant. He speaks 5 languages and he's making fish sticks. I ain't buying it.
He wasn't making fish sticks. He was selling the equipment that made fish sticks. He was making a killing.
Whole different story. Yeah. Greg Garcia, why must we always cater to other cultures? If you go to their countries, they will not cater to you. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's very expensive. Why do we have to have multiple languages? You need to learn to communicate in the language of the country, which is English. Good morning, Renee.
I mean, anything the government prints in more than one language is obviously twice as expensive. I don't think it costs any more to put a label on a can. The label's already going on the can. You just change up the design of it. It doesn't make the can bigger just because you have 2 languages on it.
Yeah.
But again, that's a marketing prerogative and a company's business strategy, but you are forced to do it if you have more than one official language. In Canada, you have to print things on a package in both English and French.
Right.
You can't just put wash, rinse, repeat on the shampoo bottle. You got to put the French version of it as well.
Douche, aqua, douche. Terry Keeley adds, England, France, Spain, their expansion and fight over New World are prime reasons for main language in North and South America. That may be how we got here, but now that we're here, why don't we just say that? All this around the barn to say that English is so obviously our nation's language. Why should we acquiesce to anybody and print anything in anything but English? I don't understand how the Senate left D.C. without ratifying, codifying, passing the SAVE Act. I don't understand that. Why is it not perfectly logical that you need to be an American to vote? People, I get it if you want to say, well, inner city people can't get on the internet and get an ID, Joe Biden. Or if you want to say, well, it ought to be free. The ID ought to be free. We're into the logistics of it. The fact that we need to be there is irrefutable. We need to be there. People that vote that's exactly why the majority of sane people are against Medicaid for all. If you just simply said Medicaid for all Americans, I'd have the conversation with you. I still don't think it's a good idea. I don't know of anything the government administers better than private enterprise could. I think there's things that we collectively give to the government, road maintenance, things like that, interstate, commerce, monitoring. We give those things to the government as opposed to private enterprise. And there are things that are fraught with the possibility of fraud. Some of those things may be better administered in practicality at the governmental level. But I don't understand why, when you have one party that doesn't want any prisons, doesn't want any borders, wants people to be able to come and go as they please, and wants Medicaid for all. These are the people that say, or Medicare for all, whichever. You have to educate them in their native tongue. So we're going to invite everybody here from all over the world. We're going to make sure that we educate them in their native tongue. they're not going to be made to assimilate or even contribute to the country in order to get free medical care. That tit will run dry really, really quickly.
Well, and you end up with ration care. You end up with access issues like in Canada. And I read an interesting story over the weekend about this. This mom was commenting how her son traveled to New Zealand. I just listened to the story. Because first of all, a bunch of questions came to my mind. And trust me, the ACA has put a lot of things in place. Like when I was an international student, I could carry travel insurance, and that sufficed the insurance requirement to be an international student. And it was good insurance. I used it on occasion.
Right.
Broke my nose playing boxing, in boxing. Anyway, but
somebody else broke your nose.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't. I led with my face instead of my fists. That was the problem. Anyway, so when the ACA came in, all of a sudden, international students whose travel insurance was better than anything they could buy over here to cover them as a student was no longer good enough. Right. You had to buy an American healthcare plan, and it raised the cost of these kids coming here. And I'm not, astronomically. Kids that had very good healthcare in their home countries, socialized, of course, but still good healthcare comparatively to what they were forced to buy. And there were only certain policies that met the perimeters of the ACA. So that's what they had to buy. It's burdensome. It's ridiculous. It's redundant, and it's a lesser product. But right. There's this mom. So anyway, trying to get around to the story. This mom was in the story talking about how her son traveled to New Zealand and was so enamored with their healthcare system because he ended up with issues that required him to visit an emergency room. And all it cost him was $56 out of pocket. And he didn't have to wait for anything. And then she explained why. Well, the kid had an appendicitis attack. So, of course, they rushed him in because it could be life-threatening. And he paid $56. Thank you to all the taxpayers in New Zealand who's picking up the tab for this 20-something-year-old from the U.S. who had enough money to fly to New Zealand, travel around the country, but couldn't buy travel insurance. So the folks in New Zealand didn't have to pick up all the cost of his ER visit. But if
the only reason they did is because he was in an emergency situation, right? They would have told him to take a hike if it wasn't an emergency.
Or he would have sat there for hours because he would have been triaged as having nothing that was life-threatening and not important. So, the fact that she's saying, oh, their socialized healthcare system, he got in so quickly and got treated. Yeah, because he could have died if he wasn't treated. No different than here. You go to the emergency room here with appendicitis, they're going to move you to the front of the line if they think it's burst or ruptured or whatever, right? If you just show up because you haven't pooped for 2 days, you're not running to the line. They're going to give you some sort of laxative, charge you $8,000 and send you home. Because that's the idiocy of our healthcare system is everything costs. I mean, we used to laugh at the $100 hammers that the Navy and Army used to buy or the $500 toilet seats. Ask for an itemized bill next time you go to the ER to the hospital. You'd be surprised at the cost of 2 Tylenol. It's ridiculous. And that's because the insurance companies have a racket. Every state has to have their own Blue Cross Blue Shield division. Makes no sense. But if I go out of state, they'll take my Blue Cross Blue Shield Texas. But only Texas can administer it or administrate it? Makes no sense.
I'm covering a new story here, and I'm trying to find, Cody, find me the frat. What fraternity was involved at Penn State University where Agostino Abuetelo, 24. He's 24.
Delta Epsilon, I think.
Wow. A major cocaine trafficking ring They've got a 24-year-old foreigner was arrested, so the DUs are not doing a great job up there. We're pleased to report that the most significant members of this cocaine trafficking organization are accounted for and will have their fair process in court. These are very serious charges, and the next steps will be preliminary hearings.
Yeah.
The 8 other student-aged defendants are facing misdemeanor counts of possession and paraphernalia.
I think one of the kids' dad's is an attorney, and he's also been charged with trying to
felony tampering. He's hindering apprehension.
Didn't want his kid to
very
go to
interesting.
jail.
That is, white crime. Yeah. Cody bounces Delta Upsilon and Sigma Chi. So there you go. Karen Murray sums it up. In New Zealand, the insured are paying to cover the uninsured. The hospitals incur.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, and we do that here with our indigent healthcare costs that the county has to pick up every year. That I remember maybe 20 years ago, the first time ever it crossed $1 million a year. And now it doesn't even make the news because it's just a regular payment.
It's a budget item.
And it's gotten a lot higher than that. The other interesting thing with this, and here's another reason why I don't think it would happen, because I think I was telling you, Brent, there's about 2 million people working in insurance in this country, right?
2 million. Yep.
And like 1.5 million of those 2 million are in the healthcare insurance business.
That's because healthcare is a racket and it's top heavy.
And
no doubt about it.
If you think, and that doesn't even include all the folks that are already working for the government in healthcare. This is one reason I don't think any party wants to touch Medicare for all, except in talking points and try to get elected. Right. What are you going to do with 1.5 million people when all of a sudden they're unemployed?
They're unemployed. Yeah, they're unemployed. And you go back, and I said it back then because I heard it from somebody reputable who knew a lot about the health insurance industry. I am licensed in health insurance. I steer it to my colleagues. The percentage of people, they estimated at that point that 10% of America has no benefits whatsoever. So in theory, the other 90% could pay, 11% more and give those people a Blue Cross card. Just give them health insurance.
Well, and how many of those are the top 10% and top 1% of wealth earners in this country that probably don't want to have insurance because it's cheaper for them just to pay in cash when something goes awry?
There probably are some who are not indigent. They're working people, but a lot of that's about choices, right? If you've got a small kid and feeding your kid and making sure your kid is insured, if they're not priorities, if you're tatted up, smoking cigarettes, cooking brisket every weekend and drinking beer, I don't feel sorry for you. I do feel sorry for the child. Now the child ends up becoming, indigent, if you will. And those are the same folks that take their kid to the ER with every runny nose, and then they can't pay. And then at the end of the day, you and I, through our county taxes, absorb their problems. It'd be easier if they had a Blue Cross card with it would be more equitable, I guess, if they had
but then who's paying for it? That still comes out of our rates who pay for the insurance. That's the problem with it, right?
Yeah, but now I pay for both. I have health insurance.
You'd be paying for both anyway.
Right.
Either way, you're paying for both. It's just, what do you make the payment to two people, the government on your taxes and the health insurance premiums? Or do you just make one payment somewhere to the government? And then you end up with, and then your coverage sucks.
You just made me think about at the mall, it's going down. At the club, it's going down. Anywhere we meet, it's going down. So at the bank, it's going down.
Torrin Bale's paying $3,500 a month for insurance for two people.
Yeah, but in Torrin's case, it includes the medical enhancement rider. That's why he always looks so good. A little nip, a little tuck.
And his medical ID bracelet is a Rolex.
A little lift. Those
that's included in the plan.
Those pectoral implants that he had put in.
So 7 million people unemployed in this country as of July. You think this country could absorb 1.5 million more people being on the unemployment rolls? Well, let's say I don't even think 500,000 of those people would find a job in a government health insurance or government-run health insurance office.
Yeah.
Right? And then they'd have to move or whatever. You'd add 1 million people to the unemployment rolls in this country.
See, Pat Visconti with a solid comment that's a shame, actually. He says, if you want, and it's refuted a little bit. People do say this. He says, you want some top-notch health care, go to the VA. It's not funny, actually. It's pathetic. I've heard the VA's got a lot better. Ricky King says, I use the Victoria VA, and they've been good so far. I haven't had any problems.
I've heard good things about the VA in Victoria.
I have too, but here's the deal. How hard is it? It's just not that hard to fix the VA. It's really not. Hire good doctors. Here's what you do. You hire good doctors and you give the veterans what they need. There you go. It's not that hard. I mean, it's going to be expensive. They've earned it. If you're worried about putting publications out in multiple languages, if you're worried about Medicare for all, while the VA is anything but an elite medical opportunity, then your priorities are messed up in this country.
Well, and therein lies the problem with the VA. I'm sure you've got two people working side by side doing the same job, and the person that processes 100 claims a day or cases a day, and the person that processes 20 VA claims a day, they make the same money, and they get the same cost of living raise every year, and there's no incentives. In private healthcare, those people that can't process those claims, they get fired.
That's right. Tell you what, in radio, those of us that can't take a break get fired. USA Foundation Repair asking you to call 578-HOME. Let Charlie Garcia come out and help you level your slab. He can also shim up your pier and beam home. He can level your driveway, that unsightly crack in your sidewalk. He can level that from underneath and then fill it in. He's great. Charlie is great.
Yeah, they don't have to do any digging on the sidewalks or driveway stuff. They just insert it's like a foam, and it's pretty cool stuff. It's really neat technology. It's fun to watch, actually.
Pat Visconti may be revealing a little something about himself, Ash. He said he had a colonoscopy and an endoscopy procedure, and he was awake for it. He said he felt and saw everything. Are you sure you weren't in the Navy, Patrick? Veracruz Restaurant inviting you in for Call to Wednesday. Today's the day to get in. We talked about it earlier. That's a plug and a half on a Wednesday. That's good for them.
That is good.
Allen's Wrecker Service, 578-6300. We can't say enough about Allen's. They do a tremendous job. Rob Christ still reeling with his fentanyl and the meds he's on. He had a knee replacement. He's very excited about it. I talked to him yesterday. He was high as a kite and really babbling, making no sense at all.
No sense at all.
He pointed out the way that you knew that he was crushed is he pointed out to me that his knee surgery was open fodder and we could make fun of him if we wanted to. I mean, as if we need a disclaimer.
As if we need another reason.
Right.
Well, I knew he was still loopy and out of it when he was talking about how hot the nurse was, and I could hear the guy talking in the background.
Rob, I need you to roll over, Rob. I got to check your catheter. Hey, baby, this is outpatient. Go easy. Peter McNally tells Torrin Bales, turning 65 and getting on Medicare, it's like getting a raise. Peter, once again, the Democrats are always there to be excited about other people's money. Went Services, Went Electrical. You need a whole house generator? You probably do. For, I don't know, it ain't cheap. I think a whole house generator probably installed around between 15,000,
somewhere in there. Less than the price of a decent used car that you would buy your kid when they go off to college.
Absolutely. But, out there in California, they're reeling a little bit about the El Nino that we know well here. they're saying that El Nino, which typically kicks in and lasts until about December, has kicked in a little earlier this year. So they're expecting a wilder than usual storm season. And it's got them all up in arms. I don't remember the last time that like a Harvey type event happened on the West Coast. I know they get storms. It's regional coverage on my part. I get it, but I don't remember a Katrina happening in LA ever. I
think they typically hit Mexico, and then they kind of go up and they weaken as they head a little further north, because the Pacific, I think, gets colder than the Atlantic sooner. But they typically veer off and head to Hawaii. Like right now, what is it? Lila has hammered Hawaii this week.
Right. And if you look at Hawaii on a map, I mean, what are the odds that a hurricane hits Hawaii? Because it is really just a dot out in the middle of the Pacific. Par Vita Wellness and the Vita Cafe. The Vita Cafe has all of your great favorites. Get into the Vita Cafe for a wrap, I think she still sells some wine, specialty drinks. Get into the Vita Cafe today. There you go. I don't think questions asked, how much have we paid into Medicare and Social Security? Will you get it all back? If not, why? I'm fairly certain, humbly, that when my father was alive, he made out on Medicare because, and I don't know what Medicare, you go to the hospital and, your bill's $5,000 a day, and then it's covered by Medicare, and you find out later Medicare paid them $23.86. So you don't know what the actual reimbursement is, but my dad, as an elderly guy, certainly on Medicare, had heart surgery, had a hip replaced. I mean, I don't remember the burden of that being very major on my family. My parents didn't spend a lot of money on that. So,
and now kind of blending that into the Social Security. I mean, I think it was W that proposed that American workers pay 10% that would have gone into Social Security into their own retirement accounts.
Here's the problem.
And right now the performance of that 10% would outpace the 90% that Social Security would have been left with.
No
to
doubt.
This point, the government, I mean, when was it? In the 60s, they threw it all into the general fund. But even then, I mean, it's just
that investment vehicle would have also funded, the U.S. now today is the day that we should surpass 40 trillion in debt as a nation. Yeah. It had individuals been able to put that money into private funding, that money may have gone further. I think the only problem is, and then I have to catch myself because it's not a conservative viewpoint. If you could, like, for example, when it comes to, say, whole life insurance, and somebody tries to tell you, well, it's got a savings deal and you can borrow against it later and all that, you can set up your own savings deal if you're disciplined being the key word. I look at Social Security as like forced savings for Americans. Now it's just a cash cow that you as we have a declining population, the boomers are still here. More and more people enter Social Security every day than enter the workforce. Look at it like that. So they're not taking your money and putting it in an account for you. They're taking your money and paying it out to other people on your behalf, if you will. There is absolutely, I'd have to look at the numbers. I think when I turn 67, I'm getting close to $4,000 a month. So round it up to 50 grand a year. I don't know if I've paid more than, if I lived 10 years at that point, got 500 grand out of the government. Have I put that much into Social Security? I really don't know. I know that, I also, you pay them both, right? Social Security and FICA.
Well, you probably hadn't put that much in, but at the time it was probably and again, I'd have to look back at the history of it. But wasn't it promised to be set aside and invested so that you did have something? And the government just completely said, to hell with that. We're just going to take it all because we're greedy. We're greedy armed, and we need all the money we can get. That's what happened. If they would have actually set it aside, invested it, even in something like the S&P 500 index fund,
right?
There'd be more money there. The government wouldn't even. I mean, they could probably cut federal income taxes.
Brian Small says that I was the burden, not the Medicare copay. That I was the burden. Yeah.
Now, Tammy Keeling says the main reason for that debt is not Social Security or Medicare. It's the tax cuts. It's not the tax cuts either, Tammy.
No.
It's the fact that our government wouldn't cut spending. It's the spending that's got us in the debt. It's not the tax cuts. Democrats didn't want to acquiesce with the tax cuts, and Republicans couldn't hold their backbones straight enough to force the Democrats to cut spending.
Yeah, you can't tax the top 1% of wage earners in this country enough to make a dent.
Well, it's funny how Elizabeth Warren is. That's she's on the warpath. Enjoy the pun.
Yes.
Right now,
Pocahontas
on the warpath. Like almost every day, the top 0.1% need to pay their fair share. I can remember a time when Elizabeth Warren and the Democrats wanted the top 10% to pay their fair share. Then it moved to the top 1% to pay their fair share. Now it's the top 0.1%. And you know why that is? Elizabeth Warren has gone from the top 10% of wage earners or wealth holders
to the top 1%
into the top 1%. Her net worth is $12 million. That puts her in the top 1% of net worth holders in this country.
How did she get
so now she needs a 0.1% tax so she doesn't get taxed.
How did she get $12 million while serving?
Insider trading?
Yeah. Which I think she's like a big opponent of, right? Torrin Bell says, I'll vote for tax cuts every time. You make up the difference by cutting spending and tariffs. I don't disagree.
Well, and apparently early this morning, late last night, the U.S. postponed their 50% tariff on Canadian goods that was supposed to go into effect today because apparently Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Trump sat down and had a phone call yesterday and worked things out. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the Donald, and trust me, I'm not feeling sorry for Donald Trump, nor does he require it. I think he's reeling a little bit. I think he does have some very real administration problems. I don't know. I think he's got to sort out his administration, and he's to do so soon. I mean, it should be such a cut and dry deal in the election cycle to vote against the Democrat Socialist of America, the Communist Party. I
struggle with I've been rather vocal about my opposition to what's going in Iran and what's going on in Iran. And apparently this morning he says, or late last night said, the Strait of Hormuz is now a new U.S. territory.
Just a dumb thing for a president to say. I can't.
We're gonna bomb Oman, our largest, one of our biggest allies in the Middle East,
who's been an ally for almost 200 years, and you don't have to threaten them in the media.
Why? Because they have an interest in the Strait of Hormuz because they are the other land. Their land borders the strait.
Well, and they're pointing out that because the strait's not open, their economy is in the tank, and they've got to responsibility to their people.
Absolutely,
and I agree. Hey, Donald, if you're going to open the strait, then go open it. Get your minesweepers over there and get it done. Quit whining about why England isn't helping you with their minesweepers. Donald, you attacked Iran without asking anybody. Go clean up the mess. Now, you'll never hear anybody on the left. They would vote for Kamala Harris, and she'd be trying to tell you that yesterday was just tomorrow, the day before, and they would be fawning over her outfit. These people talking. Kamala Harris gets on television and tells you how white people are inherently bad as she's married to Doug Emhoff. Don't be a hypocrite. That's the biggest problem the left has. They have no platform except anything other than Donald Trump's. That's their only platform. So as a result, they're the biggest hypocrites on the planet. I don't understand, though. As somebody who said, hey, look, you've heard me say it to you privately 100 times, Ash, until I have access to the CIA information, until I have access to the intelligence reports, I'm going to defer to the administration. I don't believe that Donald Trump sits in a closed cabinet meeting and everybody there says, hey, Donald, we're against attacking Iran. And he goes, well, that's okay. We're going to do it anyway. I don't believe that happens. I really don't. Now, it could, and that's the persona that's been heaped on the man from the media that we know to be corrupt. I just say, if you're going to do it, go do it. If you don't think the U.S. could whip Iran's ass, then get out of there.
And that's the problem I have because, 2 years ago, we apparently used the mother of all bombs to destroy their nuclear capabilities. But then a year later, we've got to go attack them because they have nuclear capabilities. Which is it? You either destroyed them or you didn't. And now and throughout this whole war.
So
we've decimated their Navy, but we don't have a Strait of Hormuz that's open and navigable because of their Navy. So which is it? We destroyed the Navy or we didn't destroy the Navy?
Well, see, Torrin Bales says, look, the biggest problem the left has is they are embracing communism. Scott Snow's next comment, unrelated but very accurate, says, you're forgetting open borders, the import of new voters. So here's the deal. What the left wants, the left is willing to accept communism because they hate communism less than they hate Donald Trump.
That's exactly it.
So that's it. They're willing to sell their souls to communism in order to get rid of Donald Trump. There are a whole bunch, Peter McNally, who would vote in an open election, if it were possible, for Zoran Mamdani. He's a nice young man. He's got lots of great ideas. You could run Mamdani Tallarico against Donald Trump and Jesus Christ, and the Democrats would line up and say, I don't want an Arab on the Republican side, and they would vote for Mamdani as a leftist communist, regardless of anything, because he's not Donald Trump.
Now, if Jesus was on the ticket, they would cry about the separation of church and state.
That would be it. So here's the deal. When you have a party that says, bring them all in, give them all a cell phone, they'll get a job when they want to. In the meantime, educate them in Arabic. And oh, by the way, let them vote. What can it hurt? American communism probably looks comfortable and a lot better for them than, Ugandan communism. So they'd much rather be here.
Well, and you look at how they're running their candidates too, right? Al Said in Michigan ran as a progressive. Then he gets elected. Then he gets elected, and he's straight out telling you that he's a socialist.
But here's the deal: the left that's represented here, Tammy, Peter, these people that claim to be moderates, or they call a progressive. They don't call a communist a progressive for nothing. I mean, that's what they are. They're communists. These people, not the voters here, but the party. The Democrat Socialists of America are communists, period. Change the name. We joked all the time about the New Democrats. The New Democrats are not Democrats. They're communists.
Yep.
And the point is, nobody here that's a leftist, a recognized leftist, is denying to me that they would vote for Mom Donnie before they would vote for Donald Trump.
And they
Shame
still
on
embrace
Donald Trump for adhering to the Constitution. Shame
and
on
they
him.
still embrace Bernie Sanders, who I will give Bernie Sanders credit for this. When he started to become more and more of a socialist, he left the Democrat Party and is now an independent, although I think he'll run as a Democrat just to get reelected. Then he'll put the I back in front of his name. He games the system.
They all do. Speaking of gaming the system, and we only have a couple of minutes left, have you seen this race for Senate in Alaska? So Chuck Schumer and his organization have pumped a lot of money, millions of dollars, into the Alaska senatorial race. There's a sitting senator there named Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan is from Alaska, and he is the Republican senator from Alaska. In the primary, and they have some kind of a wonky deal over there, Ash. They have 16 people on the ballot. The top 4 make it to like a runoff, and they do this like depending on where you are on the ballot, you get a percentage of other people's votes. It's just a weird, wonky deal. It really is. You have to look it up to understand it. And there are 2 Dan Sullivans on the ballot. Both are listed as Republicans. But one of the Dan Sullivans is not Dan Sullivan, the sitting senator. He's also a guy who has admitted openly that he voted in the last 3 presidential elections, he voted Democrat. His PAC money has been traced back to, like, directly, this is from Breitbart this morning, directly back to monies funneled in from Chuck Schumer. So you have a sitting United States senator helping fund kind of a Contra campaign to sow confusion in the market, if you will. And that's okay, because the Democrats do whatever they have to do to get elected. And that's okay. It's okay that they do that. In the vote last night, the lady who is the legitimate Democrat candidate got 48% of the vote. Dan Sullivan, the sitting senator, got like 43%. But in a distant third was the other Dan Sullivan at almost 3% of the vote. The guy didn't campaign. The guy's just got his name on the ballot. Got 3% of the vote.
So you had a bunch of people probably voting for Dan Sullivan thinking it was the other Dan Sullivan.
Right. They've tried to take the other guy off the ballot. And I kind of have to say, I'm not sure that's right, because what if he was sincerely interested in the race? What if he was a legitimate candidate? You know, if you had 2 John Smiths on the ballot, you better find a way to tell them which John Smith you are. But it's a tremendous financial burden on the sitting senator. So that's interesting. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk baseball for a minute. Folks, White Wing Materials. Hey, we need you. If you need sand, gravel, fill dirt, topsoil, if you want us to keep them as a sponsor, you better call them. It's 920-SAND. They're ready.
Give them a call. You're getting ready for your winter garden? Give them a call. They'll provide great topsoil for your garden, and you'll grow great vegetables when you get all your root vegetables at Deerland Feed.
I'll tell you what you can do. I dare you to do it. All of you want to make a difference in the world. You all think, oh, my vote doesn't matter. You want to make a difference? Dial 920-SAND, 920-SAND, and just say, hey, I don't need any dirt right now, but when I do, I'll call you. Thanks for supporting Wade and Carter. I love listening to the radio show. I threw that last part in there for me. 920-SAND. Just call them, just so they know that their ad actually reaches people, or we're going to lose them. And we lose enough of them, you're going to lose us. So if you're either on the team or you're not on the team. If you're not on the team, get on the bus. We'll take you to the re-education camp. Cheswick Furniture, Cheswick and Love, make your house a home. Get in and see why, You just always do better at Chestnut. Chestnut's got American best recliners and sofas and love seats. You can order it with any material you want. You want leather? Tell them what color. Go in and visit with Bobby Leon. It's like getting custom furniture at a retail price. It's great. You will like it.
Yeah.
Palace Bingo had lunch yesterday with Ronnie Koshin. Palace Bingo is the #1 supporter of Warriors Weekend. Warriors Weekend is in need of guides. You don't have to be a licensed guide. You have to be a guy or girl
that has a boat. And wants to take some friends fishing.
Absolutely. And they need it. They've got so many. They've been so blessed. They have so many Warriors coming in. Reach out to Ronnie. You can find him on Facebook at Warriors Weekend. If you feel led to share your boat, that would be a great thing to do. First State Bank of Louise Astros update. We talked yesterday. Astros lost. Rangers won. Astros now have a slim 1-game lead in the American League West.
They got to win these last 2 against the Angels because then they go. I think they go play the Yankees on the road.
Yeah, it's not going to be great, although they do pretty good in Yankee Stadium.
Well, and they seem to play better against better teams. That's for sure.
Yeah, which is, to me, I'm sorry, Ash. To me, that's a coaching issue. If you don't beat the teams you ought to beat, there's a lack of intensity in general. Could be that Joe Espada is just a little too Adderalled. He may need to amp it up a little little more caffeine. But, hey, I appreciate the feedback this morning. Great banter, a lot of good stuff. I appreciate those of you that understand that Ash and I don't just blindly support the Republican Party. That's not what we're about. We're here about what's really going on.
Happen to lean more with the ideals of the party and conservatism. But
let's put it this way. I do believe in borders. I'm not giving up my guns. I believe in the sanctity of life. I believe that a man and a woman constitute a marriage. I believe that LGBTQ extra rights are an affront to Western civilization. I believe that the Muslim infiltration of our country is a national security threat and that they should be denaturalized and deported. I have no problem with any of that. And all of that is better than an open border, abortion on demand, transgenders in sports, all of that minutia. That's got to go.
Anybody can vote.
Anybody can vote. Everybody gets free health care. Ash, talk to you down the road, baby.
Bye, folks.
Have a great day, folks. Bye-bye.